Welcome to another live stream for a moment. Today we shall discuss the logging feature. So, constructing a software is it's a very rigorous process, and then we as humans are not very rigorous to begin with, and that's why we needed tools to help us. Imagine if you're doing some math you're solving some math problem, and then you probably need to check at each step whether your previous steps is correct, and then eventually combine everything to output a result. And that checking is going to be very difficult if that's not written down. And logging behaves very much like that. So debugging so debugging and logging are like kind of goes hand in hand. And as we construct software, it's inevitable we're going to make mistakes, and and then we need a way for us to reconstruct the both the state of the system at that time and the the steps that the system went through. So that is like crucial for anyone that has worked in software engineering, and being a no-code development platform, I think is no different, because in the end we're all just constructing applications for our users, and when we mistakes, and even if we don't, we need to know what happened with the system. So, a couple of peculiarities with no code. Because most of no code, I think all of them, have their own stack. By a stack, I mean like their own encapsulation of functionalities. It's difficult to rely on existing logging infrastructure, and also a lot of them involves um, a lot of the existing logging infrastructure involves you having to write very complex queries, or you have to be very careful about performance. So we intend to solve some of that. So logging wasn't available in Moment until the end of October, I think, of 2024, which, you know, I would call that a huge mistake, because that hindered a lot of our users' ability to understand what really went on, and made debugging unnecessarily difficult and tedious. So, yeah, so that's what we started off with. So, this is the logging service for Moment, and um, we basically have things grouped into different, we call it different, not necessarily components, but different parts of the system. And we have a way to tie them all together, which is this TraceId. The idea is that for each action that is either triggered by a user or triggered by the system automatically, you get a unique trace ID, and that trace ID is going to accompany all the steps of that particular action until the end. So today I will show a couple of examples of how this help us understand what really went on in the system. And you can find the documentation in docs.momen.app. So yeah, so go there. And also, this is still fairly new, and we are still adding more functionality into the the log, both in terms of sometimes like how things are displayed, and stuff like the active So a lot of this is basically passive. It's triggered by whatever, it's by default the system will generate these logs, but we wanted something that allows the user more control to generate logs as they see fit, because that's where uh, you know they would know like exactly where is the most important to add logs. Very similar to a software engineer who just writes like console.log. And before we start, one last thing: logging and a log and a debugger are two different things. They are both very useful. I don't think like well, you cannot really replace a log with debugger, but you can more or less replace a debugger with log. Anyone who has written any kind of well, I guess even from the beginning for people writing C, there's debugger, but imagine if you're writing assembly, there is very little that you can do to help you to debug. We will try to develop a debugger for Moment as well. We're still thinking about how to do it. It might take a while. It might be, well, we won't do that this year for sure. This year, its focus is just on native mobile applications and AI assistance. So there will be none of these debuggers coming out this year. All right, so I have created this thing called Udemy, right? It's a cheeky, it's a cheeky Udemy, like poor man's Udemy, right? And so I named it Udemy, and you can go and look at it. It's I think I published it at udemy.momen.cloud. We'll go through the functionalities and then we'll see what kind of logs this thing generated. Okay, so I'm in here. I got a MoMA introduction and I got a thing called Ukraine. We're missing an E. Ukraine stuff. And I have two categories and I can look around. And when I log in, maybe I want a new account. So I'll call myself Jiang Yao Kai 3 and some password. And I now sign up. Good. So I'm now signed up as Jiang Yao Kai 3. And let's first look at what happens in the log, right? So the first thing we see is in all, obviously. That's just where all the logs are. You can see a bunch of these get image by exid, so that's how we get the image URL. And it contains both the request and the response. This looks funny because we didn't, because of a mistake. I was just in chat with one of my engineers. This is not in JSON format. This is actually a string, even though the content of it is a JSON, so it's a string. So it doesn't look as nice as this. So this obviously is more readable. This not so much. But worst case, you can copy out. Maybe we should add a copy functionality as well. You can copy that and then look at the content. So because of the lack of the copy functionality, we have to do like this, right? You'll be able to copy the element and then look at the content of it. So we got a bunch of these get image by exid, so that's not very interesting. So let's get rid of that. Exclude from query and run again. So those are gone. Now, maybe we have some interesting stuff. Okay, so we got a thing that's going. This is actually in descending order. So whatever is last is, whatever's first happened last. You got this timestamp here. They are going to be very, very close together because these requests are issued simultaneously. And let's look at something that's more interesting. Okay, for example, here. This is what happens in a database. So what really happens in the database will show you exactly what happens, and that way, if you run into some performance issues, you can do something about it. It's difficult to control, obviously, in the world of Moment, but at least you know. It's and if you don't understand what really goes on here, it doesn't really matter because um, all you need to know is like the sequence of things happening, right? Okay, so let's look at the let's find I think register login. Maybe there's something called login. And this is how you do the search, by the way. It's quite simple. So request dot, we'll just do register. I think that's what it was. No, there is no register. So login. Maybe just log. I forgot what the API was. All right, so let's try it again. I'm gonna register new things without messing the whole thing up. I'm gonna log out first. I'm gonna register with Zhang 4, and okay, so I'll just do that. So that's done. Let's look at what really happens. Last minute is good enough. Okay, where's my registration? So this happened at 3011. So that's 34. And here we go. Okay, this guy here, actually. This is what happened. So when I clicked on register, and this is what really went in it. And you can see my password is just password. In the future, we might want to hide this as well. These things should be redacted, but you can see the request. And it took 277 milliseconds. And you can see the Jiang Yaokai 4 registered with password, and it succeeded. So this is the request. And then once we finish registration, in Moment, we actually refresh the page because now you are a different user. You should be able to see different things. There might be different permissions attached to the user. So the whole page will get reloaded. So that is just reading like what courses I have. So this is the table that contains what courses I have. This account has course thing. And that was the, wait a second. This is a response. Yeah, this is actual response of the registration. And you can see this contains the actual token here. The token of the user. A token is just something that user identified himself with, and the token is a non-forgeable thing. Only the server can generate that. It contains a digital signature. By the way, at any time, if you find something confusing or want me to explain anything further, or just have comments, please don't hesitate to post it. And then here is the response. This is the response of. This is not actually. This is just a request. And also, like as I said, which one is the actual action of the user, right? So this registration thing is going to have a the TraceId, and if you just add it in, you can see everything that's tied to it. So unfortunately, the time has elapsed. So okay, yeah. So we have exactly 3 logs associated with that particular click. The first one is coming in here. This is actually the gateway. So if we click over to gateway, you see this particular thing. So that's the first thing that hit. The request will hit the gateway. The gateway is only going to record the request, but not the response. It will also tell you how long it took, which is going to be very useful if later if you run into something that's really slow, you can tell it here. And then upstream status 200. These are HTTP request code. So if you look at HTTP 200, what does it mean? 200 is basically okay, successful. Okay, and response size is how big that response is. Request size is how big the request is. And then you got the user agent and referrer. The referrer is on which domain, on which URL this the request was sent from the browser side. And user agent is somewhat useful, like to determine like what your users are using, and it's useful to if something goes wrong, if you have browser compatibility issues, this is something that can help you. Okay, so the next thing it's going to hit is going to be at where are we? I think it's going to be at GQL level. Yes, that is where it. Okay, so that will hit the GQL level. This is the request. This is the response. So you can see that request happens before response, and in fact, it took it, 200 less than 200 milliseconds if you subtract 407 from 424, right? So it's like 170. No, 17. That is 17 milliseconds. Yes. Okay, so these are the response. So if you're interested in what your user actually received on the browser side, this is what you should check. Unfortunately, as I said, we did not make that a JSON. We will fix it, but this is what you can look at right now. It's the way it is. We should hopefully be able to fix that by today's end. Today meaning the UTC today. Okay, and for this particular request, that's it. We just have an API, a gateway, and then there's some GQL response. So let's look at something else, right? If we, what if we clicked somewhere? If I just click this, right? I clicked. Okay. So what goes on here? Let's first get rid of other things and then just go to all. That was the last request. I was getting some videos, and if you just want to look at if you find like this all screen too daunting, which I find it too, I'd usually just go to gateway and see what requests actually came in. Okay, you got these video stuff, which we don't really care about. And then we got, let's get rid of that. This looks interesting. So this is getting courses. By the way, these are GQL, and then if you find it, let's see if I just add it in. These are GraphQL queries. This GraphQL schema, well, it's very similar to Hasura's. We actually made some extension on it. And to explain what really goes on, just go to ChatGPT and say, explain what this GraphQL query might mean. And also, we're gonna add this to log as well. This is whoops, I forgot to type in the actual query. That's not Very useful. Click. Okay. All right. So says the query name is just the name of the query. It's an identifier that's automatically generated. Well, it's very much correct. It's pointless. It's just a name. And you got this where, order by, distinct on, and all these things. And main query is the top level selection is course. That corresponds to your table name. And in fact, the table name is course. Course contains, well, I didn't really put in that many. I put in 3 courses belonging to 2 separate categories, right? But that's the course. We got these, I got the lorem ipsum stuff, and then I got this stuff that I got out of YouTube transcript. And it's getting the ID and the name, and it tries to get there's a thing called learners aggregate count. It retrieves the count of the learners satisfying that condition being the the course, basically. And then you get the video and the URL, and you got author and price and details. Purpose. The query is likely used scenario where detailed information about a single course is needed, which is exactly what we did. I clicked into, where's my Udemy? Okay, yeah, I clicked into a new page. That page is about a particular course, which is named Moment Introduction. And it gets a total number of learners, and then it gets the videos associated with the course, author information, pricing, and other details. So that is exactly what it does. And ChatGPT is fairly good at deciphering what our queries mean, mainly because, well, in fact, like if I could just copy the entire thing, it'll be nice. That's a future request we're gonna make. In fact, if I put in the variables into it, it will give me even better answers. So let's be lazy, right? And then just do this. I'm gonna screenshot that and do the same thing. Explain to me what this query is trying to do. All right. And blah, 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 doesn't really matter. It's very similar, and variables provided, purpose. It's trying to fetch the course ID equals 1. Ta-da! It's getting some result, and so by certain condition, there was actually no condition right here. So it's still, because I didn't really send it text format. If I sent it text format, it would figure out there was no condition here. Okay, so this is one of the nice things. You could just get ChatGPT to explain to you what this is. And it got some other things like get image by ID, which is a fairly common thing we will execute because the image URLs in Moment is dynamic to prevent essentially like people using your website as like a picture hosting service without paying you. Because if your URL is static, then they can, always refer to that URL and just upload something and use your bandwidth. And you have to pay me for the bandwidth. So that's not good. Okay, so once we figured out, we got this request, which corresponds to this page, which corresponds to the remote data here. Well, we no longer call it remote data. We now call it data source. Ooh, fancy. Yeah, so it has this course thing. That's a query, so that's there. But we didn't see user has course, right? We didn't see that. That's because this thing is a subscription, and that is using WebSocket, and we don't yet have support for WebSocket logging. So that's something that will be fixed, but at the moment you can't see it. Okay, so this is the request we're looking at. Now, what really went on with that request? So let's repeat what we did. We're gonna just add the query here, and just that. No, wrong. Not request ID. That's just some random thing that what we call this ngx added. We're gonna add the trace ID here, and we're gonna query. Nothing's gonna show up because time has passed. And let's go to all. Okay, so what went on? The request came in on the well, these they're too close together. That's why they probably like there's a logging delay. But this is when actually no, this is correct. This is when we received the request. This is logged when the request is okay. So let me try to get this straight. These are different systems, right? And because they're different systems, there's no synchronized clock between them. The fundamental thing about distributed systems is the clock is going to be discrepant. So you can only compare the sequence of something that's in a single system. So if you look at database, right, these are in sequence. You got 1, 2, 3. And if you look at GraphQL, well, there's only one, so that doesn't matter. You've got a gateway. Well, there's only one, it doesn't matter. But when you go to all, there is no deterministic sequence on what really happens before the other. You can only look at them one by one. But the thing always hits the gateway first. The gateway will then take ask the backend server to run the actual thing, and the backend server will log something when it receives request, and then we'll log something when it finishes processing. So there will be multiple logs for each request. This particular one took 95 milliseconds, and this is when you got when the request started, and this is when it's running the SQL, and you can see what SQL it is running. And it's basically just, it's a fairly standard one. Select course.author.author as blah, 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 blah. And you can see that in Momen, we only fetch the things that are required on the page, right? A course has, if you look at the course, it has many fields. It has, a bunch of fields. We did not select all of them. We selected the author thing, price, and name, detail, and video. That's it. So we didn't select out everything because that's not displayed. And also here, we also ran one query for the actual count, because we had to count. Where is it? We had to count this guy. Okay, and let's go back to see database access. And then lastly, we got this one, which is this is the response, right? So that's the actual response. There is no SQL here. So we ran 2 SQLs on the database for that particular request, and we only fetch the data that we need. Okay, so this contains the result as well. By the way, what if your result is like super long, right? We cut it off. So there's no way your log will be overwhelmed. It's both a cost saving and also for sanity saving, because if you have a log that takes 5 screens, it's not very useful. You might want other ways to debug this thing. Okay. Oh, by the way, this is also pretty useful for adding into ChatGPT. And all these things that are useful to add into ChatGPT is useful for us to add like a button, like explain this log or explain this sequence of logs. Right? What if we just put in that, right? Explain to me what happens. This is a log. This is a log message. What happened? Again, ChatGPT is very good at those stuff because we generate logs in a reasonable fashion. We don't go crazy with log formats. We don't use just ridiculous proprietary things. We don't try to obfuscate. Can't get that right. The message. So you have all the observability that most software engineers have. And so this says the query does something and the response has something inside from a log. The purpose aims to fetch detailed information about a specific course equals 1, successful this query successful process, and the response returned to data. Learner count condition where the learner condition was provided the variable was empty, meaning no additional filtering was required. This time it got it correct. Last time when we were checking at it, it wasn't because it couldn't tell that a missing on a screenshot when there's like just blank. It didn't realize it was fully empty. And time was completed as a context and conclusion indicates a specific GraphQL API call retrieving detailed information about a course named Moment introduction from a system managing courses. Very correct. The result included course metadata, author information, video details, and learners count, demonstrating the API is performed as expected. Great. So that is what happens when we clicked on that. On this page. So now let's do something slightly more involved. Let's buy this stuff, right? Because when you're here, it says, well, you know, I don't own it, obviously, because I haven't bought it. So let's try to buy this. So I just clicked purchase now, and something just popped up. Okay, so what really went on? So obviously we need to get rid of the filter. There's something going. Okay, Stripe Pay, fantastic. Okay, so let's look at what went on with this guy. Again, you see me using the TraceId to look at all the things that went on with this particular request. Stripe Pay, it's pay 1990, and it took pretty much longer, and that's to be expected because remember when we were looking at when you moved over to the other page, it was taking 92 milliseconds. In fact, I think it's probably AWS issue. Usually these things should take like 20 milliseconds or something, right? And Moment is very fast in these things. I don't know why it's taking 95. You might think 95 is fast, but to me this is like a 4x off. This is expected though, because that's when you send a request to Moment's server, and Moment would have to then ask Stripe, and there's obviously that's going to another server. Also, Stripe is, as you can expect, quite strict with all this encryption and stuff. So there's encryption and decryption costs and all that. So it takes a second for Stripe to return back the result. And you can see the this is I forgot what this was, but anyways, this is what happened when we use Stripe. It calls Stripe and gives you a result. Now, oh, I think I remember right. This is what we use on the front end to show this screen. This screen needs a one-time Stripe generated token so that we know how much to charge you. This is actually a test, so you can just put in 424242. You can knock yourself out with buying all the things you don't need, and you can just, it doesn't check anything. All right, so we're gonna pay it now, and then we'll see what happens on the back end. It blah 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 blah. That's done. And we also have this thing automatically switch to you have bought this stuff. So that's all very fancy. So what happens going in here, right? Okay, get rid of the TraceId. We probably should add a thing that like cleared the whole thing. But anyways, all right, this is a lot more than usual because it did a lot of things. So maybe you can also have something that exports this page. But anyways, let's see where did someone just get in? Okay, never mind. Let's just look at the gateway because otherwise I'll get lost. So it's getting a new course. Somebody's clicking around, I think. That's why I'm getting lost in here. Let me think how I should. That's actually a good thing. How do you find your log in all this stuff? Okay. One thing I know is that when you set up the payment, you are going to be invoking the action flow. But that's how the payment callback is handled. And the action flow, fortunately, has an ID. And then you just copy that ID here. And I think that goes in here. And $43, $35. Yeah, this is me. This is actually the and you can probably see it here, the E9, right? This is the same ID, and then let's just look at the TraceId. Okay, and then we go to all. This is everything that happened. So a lot of things really happened under the hood. Obviously, you're gonna have a there is going to be a gateway. Huh, what happened to my gateway? That's not good. That's probably a bug. But let's go back to let's look at them one by one, right? Okay, so you got a callback ID, and that's just that's this guy. That's this guy. This 76 thing. And yeah, 767 thing. Okay, and then this is what yeah, again, this is not in JSON format. It became a string, so it's very difficult to read. But essentially, you can see that Stripe has told us a bunch of things, like what the ID is, what the API version is, when that was created, the data, and then the payment intent, objects of the payment intent, the amount is 1990, and there's no tip we received 9090, and there's no fee and all that stuff. But essentially, this is a notification coming from Stripe side telling us that somebody has paid us. Now, what happens then is that we started calling the action flow. You can see now it mentions the action flow. The callback is a trigger. That's something that receives a notification. The trigger then calls this action flow itself. And in here, we just passed in everything. We ran it. And the action flow has many nodes. You can see it has like many nodes, and it even goes to different sides. It has a branch, right? So in here, the first thing it says is like we have a current account ID. This is a fake account ID. As you can see, nobody has that usually. And the whole input is this. And then you got this node name thing. So let me see if I can make this more presentable, because again, when it's not in JSON format, when it's just a string, it's horrible to look at. Let's see if I can make this thing slightly less annoying. JSON viewer or something. Let's find one of those. All right, okay, much better. Okay, so the input, we got the callback input, which is the exact same thing that's passed in from from Skype. Sorry, not Skype, Stripe. And there's some duplicate information. You can see there's, but this essentially is the start. So at the start, we will log something. So there's, where are we? That's this guy. That's the start. When nothing has happened yet, we just log this. And the next step, you can see there's a new one. You got this node ID of 08, and who is this 08? 6G08. I think that's probably him. It doesn't show. But anyways, it then this node is, oh wait, sorry, that's a duplicate message here, and this is a custom code node, which corresponds to this guy. This is the custom code node, type custom code. We should show the ID here, but that's not here, so that's not nice. But this is what, yeah, I'll just add this as well. And expand this. So that's the input. That's the same thing that we saw, but and then you got the at the moment it's just this. It's just start. It's the when it started, and then when it ends, you get a new one. But before it ends, it will run a bunch of things inside. So here it says run GQL and action flow execution, GQL update, blah, 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 and variable that. So that corresponds to this particular line here. I think that corresponds it here. Update FC payment count, payment status, yeah. Update payment status. That's the same one. So whenever you run something inside the custom code which interacts with the database, we will log it for you. And then it ran another thing, retrieve payment record. So that is in here, retrieve payment record. And then here is the result. The state is ready. That's the output of the results. That's when custom code node has finished. So you can see it ended at, it has an end at here, 9:14. And if we go back to see when it started at, I think it's the custom code guy. Yeah, it was 9:14. This one is 6:56. So it's like 250 milliseconds. So these things are much slower than the usual database access, which, if you remember, it was going to be like a few tens of milliseconds. But this is also because these JS code has a concept of warming up. As you run more of them, they will actually become faster. It's a effect of something called JIT, just-in-time compilation. But anyways, so that's done. We now have this update record thing, which is here, this update order, right? And that thing, it started here. It's got all the current state. So every time a node starts, we'll record everything that the action flow has access to. And then we'll record it started, and then within it, what it ran. It actually ran this update thing, update purchase order, and these are all the variables. And then this is when it finished. So each node will correspond to one start, maybe one or more in the middle, and then one end. And all this is, so you can expect one more like that for add course, and eventually the actual callback is going to finish. So that ended at 393. All these are actually in the same system, so they are sequenced. Which ones are in the same system? Well, at the moment, it's hard for you to tell. I know because I constructed most of this, so maybe we should group this in some fashion for you to make more sense of it. But essentially, you can look at this. This one ended at 393, and it started at 297, but 39,297 and 42,393. So it took 3 seconds to complete the whole payment thing. Just to prove that the fact that this thing actually does become faster, we're gonna go to new one. So I bought this one, so now I have this, right? But let's say I haven't bought another one. I'm just gonna buy another one, the Ukraine stuff. All right, so I'm gonna buy a new thing. That's paid. We'll go back to action flow and get rid of everything. Oh, that's a very long thing, so I didn't like it. We got a callback update payment, so that's probably me. Let's go back to all, and this time it should be faster. So it's ended at 786. And that one is at 14.4. So that's 1 second and a bit. The first one took like 3 seconds. This time it's 1 second. It will continuously get faster until it plateaus out. So that's when I was talking about this whole JIT compilation thing. All right, so I've now bought my fancy course. I'm gonna go into here, and let's try one last thing. This time I'm gonna invoke some AI. All right, so the concept is that, where are we? The concept that you can ask about the content of the course. So that's the idea of this AI thing. What do we say? Okay, can I, like, maybe not can I, how can I add a picture to the page? Okay, so we're gonna click. Oh, hold on. You should probably look at it. So yeah, it just came up like, to add a picture to the page, you need to use an image component. And not bad. In the context of blog app, you're building, well, I'm not building a blog app, but I guess this was building a blog app. You should bind the image component to the cover image field of the blog data table. Wow, that's very fancy. This way, the image will be displayed based on the data you have set up in your database. Cool. Now, what does this do? So let's go to AI, because we were using AI. So let's look, oh, something just, and you can see there's a bug where there's no TraceId. So as I said, this thing's fairly new. It works pretty well when you know how to get around it, but unfortunately, there's still rough edges. But you can see what happens. The AI started at this time, and it has some conversation ID and message IDs. What is the point of these, right? That's for you to look at the conversation. You can look at the conversation here. Conversation ID of what? 48, and the message ID is 73. So 48 has two messages, and the first message was 73. So we went to 73, and then we can open up the content and look at the text. That's whatever that was sent to the AI. So you have full observability on what the hell went on with all the AI calls. We don't try to hide that from you. Even though we do some kind of trick with the AI by forcing you to structurally use AI, we still observe everything. Sorry, we still let you observe everything. And I have no idea what the hell this is. Yeah. And then here is what uh, the large language model response is. This shouldn't really say GPT, it should say large language model, but whatever. That's what the API from OpenAI side returned to us in all its glory, right? Even the things that you don't usually get to see, like the prompt filter results, and then block lists and jailbreak and all that stuff, indirect attack, things that OpenAI would tell us if somebody's doing something fishy. And it also tells you what model you're using, so you can check that we're not lying to you. When you choose, which one was that? I forgot. It's probably this guy. When we tell you we're using GPT-04 Mini, that's for Mini, and if otherwise, it's just the other one. All right, and then this is the actual response in the end that we extracted from this. And yeah, that's basically how an AI thing calls. Obviously, you will find the corresponding thing in the gateway. Excuse me. Like, where are we? I think it's something like conversation. But let's see. Okay, I'm bad at this. Okay, I have to brush up on I have to brush up on the syntax. All right, so these are no longer coming soon, by the way. We already have them. We just haven't updated the log, the doc. That is very odd. ¿Por qué? Okay, let me just do this. We're gonna mute. Okay, here, this guy. ZAI create conversation. Right, you can do that. So let's look at that. ZAI create conversation. So okay, that there's a single call in the last hour, which is me, and that was what I sent, and that was the stuff I sent. How can I add a picture to the page? And that's exactly what went on. And unfortunately, because we forgot to add the TraceId, so like there's only one thing. Really, this should be tied to AI. And the whole idea is that eventually we will have a nicer view than just the plain text. You might be able to see different bars when things are happening, and it's like a waterfall, right? What happened, and then you got the another bar following it, and then you can see all the things happening in a more visual way. But at the moment, this is the best we have. And as you can see, the best we have is still not very good. It's better than a lot of no-code tools logging thing, but it's not as good as what software engineers have access to. And our idea is, the tooling should be equivalent, if not better, than what we have in professional software development. As humans tend to perceive things very similarly. Like the best way of understanding something is usually a mixture of textual and spatial information. And that's why GUIs work a lot better than just command lines. And I'm sure most of you don't like command lines. All right, that's to the end of the live streaming. And if you have questions, please ask out. And otherwise, I shall go to file bug reports, as we found a couple in the live stream. But most of it worked as expected, so that was pretty nice. I mean, we had some clients that was once wondering why things were slow with their page. They were able to find a lot of things that they couldn't, like what was the slowest request time, and also by like leveraging ChatGPT, you can actually get a lot of insight into how your system ran. Okay, thank you. It seems like there's no questions, or is there a question? Okay, there is no question. Okay, good. Goodbye, and please like and subscribe if you find this useful, and come back next time. Bye bye.